the witches' coven was supposedly taking place just outside of Salem village.
The young girls of Salem informed the magistrates that a coven of witches at Salem village is meeting in the wooded field near Minister Samuel Parris's home. The devil led young girls there to frolic with him and to sign his book and take his oath, which would make them witches, like some of the older women who flew into the field from Salem town on broomsticks. Signing the book was tantamount to selling one's soul to the devil, the black man, or man in black who tempted them there. The girls eventually revealed was a Harvard graduate and former Salem minister of the Puritan faith named George Burroughs.
No one was actually meeting in the woods. This is a story the girls made up to keep themselves out of trouble, because while Samuel Parris and his wife were out of the house, they were there with Tituba, learning voodoo, hearing stories about the Barbados, and practicing fortune-telling. So not very Puritan things to do. So if you follow me this way here, we're going to go into the Parris house and find out what happened there. Now, although the original Parris house had 4 rooms, 2 upstairs and 2 downstairs, we just have the downstairs section of the house, so the scene has 2 rooms in it. The first room shows Tituba along with her husband John and some of the afflicted village girls, whereas the room on the other side of the wall shows Dr. Griggs, Reverend Parris, and Betty Parris. Now folks, as the voiceover goes, feel free to wander between these 2 rooms. It will be talking about both of them.
It was Reverend Samuel Parris's slave woman, Tituba, and her husband John Indian, who sparked the witch hysteria by teaching the neighborhood girls and servants, ages 8 to 18, the art of voodooism in the minister's kitchen. The girls became obsessed with Tituba's magic and fearsome tales. The younger girls, including the Reverend Parris's daughter Elizabeth and her cousin Abigail Williams, began having nightmarish fits and double up in convulsions. The local Dr. Griggs was called in to help the girls, but he admitted there was nothing he could do. The girls, he said, had been bewitched. By beating Tituba, Reverend Parris received a confession from her. She admitted she was a witch, but she and the other girls were quick to accuse many other people in the village and the adjoining town as the practicing witches.
Well, you're going to see what these accusations of witchcraft did. Now, the witch hysteria spread to 34 different towns and communities in the area, all the way from Boston to the borders of New Hampshire. Now, this here is what would have happened if the afflicted girls had come into one of the local towns or villages.
The teenage girls of Salem, who accused Tituba and the neighboring men and women of witchcraft, were hired to travel to other towns and villages of Essex County to point out the witches who dwelled there. Everyone was afraid of being called a witch. Brother turned on sister, child on mother, neighbor on neighbor. Old folks, disfigured ones, the mentally disturbed and those who acted strangely were lined up in the village greens, and the girls pointed out the witches. The sheriff and his pikemen immediately carted them off to jail to await examination, possible trial, and probable execution.
Well, folks, we're going to make our way up to Wells, Maine to see one of the more famous arrests and captures, and that is of George Burroughs. He was the man in black in the first scene. Now, today, Wells, Maine is only an hour's drive from here, but back then, it would have taken the Puritans about 3 days to get there.
The former Puritan minister of the Salem Village Church, George Burroughs, is accused by the girls of being the devil himself. A noted strongman, Burroughs is captured at his house in Wells, Maine, by the cruel Salem sheriff, George Corwin, and his deputies. But he battles his captors, and when a storm suddenly erupts, a moment are terribly frightened, for they are convinced that they have captured the devil himself, and he will strike them down with bolts of lightning. Shaking with fear, the lawman Deliver burrows to the Salem judges. He is found guilty of witchcraft and is condemned to hang at Gallows Hill.
We made our form a little bit long, so we usually make our way over to the courtroom here. Now this here is the court of Oyer and Terminar, which in Old English meant to hear and determine. It was set up by Governor William Phipps in May of 1692 just for the witch trials. Now this would have been about where our modern courthouses are today, but the court of Oyer and Terminar is no longer there. It would have been destroyed sometime after the witch hysteria, as it was no longer needed here in Salem.
Yes, Mr. Judge, I'm a witch. My mistress, Miss Hawks, made me a witch.
These are the words of a black slave girl named Candy to Judge Hawthorne. Candy, like Tituba, came from Barbados and practiced voodooism. She asked Judge Hawthorne permission to leave the courthouse so she could run to her mistress's house to collect a powerful puppet which they used to stick pins into. The judge made Candy eat part of the puppet, made of grass and cheese, and then ordered her to burn the puppet, which she did, burning herself badly in the process. Candy screamed and dropped the burning figure to the courtroom floor. Judge Hawthorne picked it up and quickly dunked it into a jug of water to extinguish the flames. Then Candy tried to rush out of the court to a nearby river to drown herself. One wonders that after such dramatic results with the puppet, Judge Hawthorne wasn't accused and convicted of witchcraft himself. Candy was set free, but her mistress, Mrs. Hawks, went to jail, accused of witchcraft.
Now the primary source of evidence used in the court cases was known as spectral evidence. The thing about spectral evidence, though, the only ones who could see it were the ones testifying. They saw it as visions, ghosts, or as dreams. Spectral evidence is also known as a witch's familiar, which are all examples here.
All witches kept at their side little imps or strange animals called familiars. They were given to witches as pets by the devil, and these little demons could appear or disappear at will, and they could make themselves larger or smaller at will, or so thought the superstitious Puritans. A witch's ward was where familiars sucked bloody milk. I saw Bridget Bishop's familiar, testified John Lauder before the Salem court in 1692. It was a black thing that jumped into my window, and it came and stood before my face. The body of it looked like a monkey, only the feet were like cock's feet with claws, and the face was somewhat more like a man than a monkey's. The black cat is, of course, the most familiar of witch familiars.